afternoon, everyone. I'm Sean Lynch, and welcome to Studio 17. Today we have a special show for you today. I'm joined by Janet McKay and Tammy Burke of the Victims Resource Center. Ladies, how are you both doing today?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you. And thank you for joining me. So first, if you could tell me a little bit about yourselves, who you are, and what you do for the Victims Resource Center.
I'm the executive director, and I've been there for 30 years, and so I'm pretty much in charge of everything in writing budgets and overseeing all the staff and doing public announcements.
Okay.
I've been there going on 29 years and recently took a different position. For 28 years I provided services to victims of crime, and I was a supervisor. I'm now the manager of community services. I provide professional trainings. I do a lot of outreach and systems advocacy.
So we are in the middle of the day here shooting, so I feel like we're cutting into your workday with this show, but tell me a little bit about the daily routine of your positions.
The day really varies. I mean, you could be in the morning doing a training somewhere, or you can be somewhere doing an outreach,
right.
or...
Mine's pretty much writing proposals to get money to make sure that we keep providing the services that we do. And it's all about grants management.
And speaking of financials, how important is that in terms of just running the business?
Well, we are a nonprofit, so that we have to find lots of ways to get that money. And we do have a lot of grants that support us, and we have to write proposals for those. But we also do fundraising, and we have an annual campaign that people contribute.
Well, very good. Many people around Luzerne County and beyond may not know much about the victims.
Victims Resource Center, we work with victims of violent crimes. We cover 3 counties, Luzerne, Wyoming, and Carbon. And each county is a little bit different in some of the services that we provide. But we work a lot with adults that have been sexually assaulted, adults who have been sexually abused as children, children who have been sexually abused and sexually assaulted, but also victims of other violent crimes: robbery, burglary, stalking, harassment, terroristic threats, identity theft, arson, homicide survivors, elder abuse, assault. So all of those things.
So we are what's called a victim services agency or program, and we have actually 3 different areas of how we approach the problem of crime victimization. And first, and probably most important in some ways, is providing a range of services to victims of crime.
We have a 24-hour hotline. Means anybody can call at any time of the day. It doesn't matter if it's Christmas, it doesn't matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. We also provide individual counseling. The people come in the office and we do one-on-one counseling. Our services are free and they're confidential.
We also do advocacy, and advocacy is on a couple different levels. Individual advocacy to make sure that crime victims' rights are being honored, and then on a larger scale what we call systems advocacy, either to change systems or to change laws that would be more beneficial to crime victims. And then prevention education is the third area that we do a number of different programs that do a couple different things. They raise awareness, but hopefully they also provide changes in the society to prevent crime from ever happening in the first place. So we do individual classroom presentations to children all the way from daycare up through college. We also do those things for adults. And the areas are mostly related to sexual assault. So some of them are cyber safety, sexual harassment, rape prevention, but they also extend to healthy relationships, building healthy, and how do you have a healthy relationship as opposed to just focusing on the unhealthy relationships, and bullying programs at all levels, because we know that all that contributes to people being victimized. We also want to change the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors in society that lead to and contribute to a culture of violence. And we know we have a culture of violence. We particularly have a culture of violence against women in the areas of sexual assault and domestic violence. So what we are trying to promote is bystander intervention. Therefore, if people see someone joking about women in a derogatory manner, or joking about, hitting their girlfriend, or any of those kinds of behaviors, or as we see on college campuses, that sometimes there is a lot of behavior, drinking, etc., partying that goes on that increases the vulnerability for victims, that if someone sees behaviors such as somebody giving a lot of drinks to someone over and over and then trying to get them isolated, that others would step in, that others would be good bystanders, and that they would say something's not right here, and they would help to intervene and prevent something from happening before it happens. Everyone needs to be involved, and we need both males and females to recognize what is it that we're both doing that don't give the message that this is not okay.
The Victims Resource Center does so much for people who are in need. We're going to touch on 3 areas of focus for the center, but first, Janet, I want to ask how you got involved with the center.
Well, I am a licensed social worker, and so the Victims Resource Center in the late 80s decided to expand to Wyoming County, and someone told me about this opportunity to start those services in a new county, and we were based in violence against women in our roots, and I was a feminist in college, so I thought this sounds like the perfect job.
Right. And Tammy, yourself?
Prior to starting here, I had no idea that this agency existed. I think as a small child, I really wanted to do some kind of social work, and I thought I would be a guidance counselor, or I would want to work with children and youth, and I went to children and youth, and it's not where I wanted to be. And then I thought, what am I going to do? I worked at a daycare center for a while, and the position came up, and I love it there.
And you mentioned that not many people know about it, and you didn't know about it. How important is it for the outreach, for the awareness to make people know about it?
I think that piece is really important. I think that there's a lot of valuable services that people are eligible for, and not everyone's familiar with that.
Right.
And I don't think that people think about our services unless they need them. So we could do lots of advertising, but it's like that doesn't have anything to do with me. I don't need that service because I'm not a victim of crime. So a lot of our outreach has to do with professionals who can refer to us that a victim would come in contact with.
And professionals such as?
Police officers, the medical field, even people in schools, guidance counselors, that are aware of children who have been victimized. Other professionals in clergy, social service agencies, many people.
The Victims Resource Center is doing everything in their power to help individuals live free from oppression and violence. One of the main goals that they have is to provide advocacy, education, and services to victims. These 3 components are what Victims Resource Center is about. The VRC wishes to address the issue of violence against victims in whatever form it takes. The organization wants to prevent victimization, sensitive society to the needs of victims, increase the quality of care provided to victims, and provide a wide range of services to meet the special needs of all victims of crime. These crimes include, but are not limited to, sexual abuse, sexual assault, and domestic violence. When we get back from this short break, we will dive into the 3 big components of the VRC.
I got a crick in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. I don't know what I'm scared of. It's very sad, all that I can do was remember you. You know I usually stay now, but if you throw me love, I'll throw it some more.
Most party fouls are pretty dumb. But if you decide to drink and drive underage, you could lose your license and your freedom. Underage drinking and driving. The ultimate party foul.
Patriotism. It inspires passionate debate. It's worn like a badge of honor with good reason, because it means love and devotion for one's country. But what really makes up this country of ours? It's the people. To love America is to love all Americans. This year, patriotism shouldn't just be about pride of country. It should be about love. Love beyond age, sexuality, disability, race, religion, and other labels. Because love has no labels.
I'm Sean Lynch, joined now by Tammy Burke, the Manager of Community Services for the VRC. Tammy's going to talk about the organization's services in a minute, but first I would like to highlight an event that happened just 2 weeks ago. The Victims Resource Center held an event to raise awareness for their cause. Admission. The rally occurred in Wilkes-Barre near the Resource Center. Students from Kings and Luzerne County Community College attended Misericordia and Wilkes, all attended the rally in order to support the Victims Resource Center. And their mission, it was an incredible event that was scheduled for Victims' Rights Week, which occurred from April 8th to April 14th. Both Jenna and Tammy, worked tirelessly. Tammy, was the event everything that you hoped it would be in terms of the outcome and the goals?
I think that it brought more awareness, into the community. I think there could have been more people really at the rally. I think previous years there's been more.
Right.
But other than that, I think it was a success. We had about 100 people there. And as you said, they were mostly from the local colleges and university. People from other agencies and their clients came to provide support. There were some people from representative offices. So I think it was good.
And how important is it for the success of an event like this for the VRC?
I think it's really important, and I think for a couple different reasons. One is it's awareness, and it gives the opportunity for victims of crime to speak out. Mm-hmm. We had 2 speakers at the rally. But for all those people in the audience that maybe have been afraid to speak out or have never shared anything, they had the opportunity to listen to other survivors. Speak, and it might give them courage to reach out and seek services, or maybe someday for them to stand at a rally and speak someday.
And I'd like to touch on that too, because a lot of times their friends or family might tell them to get the help, but it has to be important for them to hear a victim of the abuse speak and hear their stories and relate to them as a way of motivation to get to them to come out and get the help that they need. Right.
And I think for the years that I've worked with victims of crime, they feel like they're different than other people. They feel like that sometimes there's something wrong with them, or that the way that they think isn't normal. But their reactions to the things that happen to them are really normal for an abnormal experience. Mm-hmm. And I think that gives them the opportunity to bond, but also to kind of really normalize
right.
the things that happen to them and the way that they feel and think about it.
And I know the VRC serves multiple counties in the area, but do you feel that there's a need for more organizations like yourself throughout the country to support
I think what's a little bit different about our agency, and across the state of Pennsylvania in each county, there is a sexual assault or domestic violence center, but not all centers are comprehensive, right. Which means that we provide services to the victims of homicide and robbery and elder abuse. I think it's limited in those other counties, and I think that, yes, we could use more agencies like ours.
Well, thank you. Let's take an even closer look at the Victims Resource Center and their services.
As a coordinator of the SART team, so the Misericordia Sexual Assault Response Team, we work really, really closely with the Victims Resource Center. What they do is they provide us with a lot of help and support in terms of making sure our service to students is something that is appropriate and that's going to be really helpful and beneficial for them. So our SART team is a team of volunteers and faculty who provide a 24-hour hotline for any student that is the victim of sexual assault. And Victims Resource Center are our go-to people. So if we have a student that is a victim of a sexual assault and we need to transport them to hospital for medical attention, a rape kit, that kind of support, we're on the phone to Victims Resource Center, and they send out one of their advocates to us to help support our student through that process. We're also able to have our protocols reviewed by them, our information reviewed by them to make sure that we know what's going on. And they provide us with a lot of educational resources as well. So they come out and do trainings for us. They keep us up to date on sexual assault information. They provide training for our students, for all different kinds of people on campus. So they're really support for us in terms of education and advocacy, but also on the ground help if we need them.
There's a law in Pennsylvania that has a protection with the confidentiality, that if you're receiving services from a sexual assault or domestic violence counselor advocate, you're covered by that confidentiality.
I think the most important thing for individuals to know is that, first of all, there are services if something happens to you, that they're available, they're free, and they're confidential. But also that everybody can be part of the solution, that everyone has a part to play, and that you can get involved and change.
We provide accompaniment to the hospital. We provide a lot of accompaniment services, but one is to the hospital. So if a sexual assault victim went to the hospital in any of those 3 counties, a counselor advocate goes out with them. Our role there is to provide support and information to the victim. When we go to the hospital, victims are in crisis. They don't always hear what the medical people are saying to them. So we stay with them. We can stay for the exam. But also we bring with them clothes so that the victim has something to wear. Their clothes are taken as part of the evidence. Our philosophy is based on empowerment, and that's how our counseling is. So we don't tell people what to do. We give them options. So that's one of the things they want to do. We'll go to the police with them for a police report. We'll go to DA interviews to provide support. And then if there's an arrest made, we go through throughout all the legal proceedings, from preliminary hearings to trials to sentencings to plea agreements to appeals. And recently, in the past few years, another accompaniment that we provide is to parole board hearings. That law changed prior to a few years ago. Victims could write to the parole board, or maybe they would sign petitions to keep an offender in when they're coming up for parole, but they never had the opportunity to go into meet with the parole board and speak to them. I think it's more powerful, and it makes it more real when the parole board is sitting across from somebody. So they have the option. They can go to Harrisburg. Counselors from our agency have gone to Harrisburg to provide support to victims, but also if they're unable to go to Harrisburg, we have done it at the courthouse, through a webcam, and we can actually do that at our office. We assist people with filing for Victims' Compensation Assistance Program. And what that is, it's money that's in Pennsylvania that pays for out-of-pocket losses to victims of crime. A lot of people don't know about that. I think it's actually Pennsylvania's best-kept secret.
I think a lot of the services they provide are very much behind the scenes, sort of advocating for victims' rights and making sure that the community are aware of what victims' rights are and how they can reach out and support a victim, and make sure that the stigma is starting to be broken down so that victims know that they can reach out to people and there is help there for them.
So Tammy, we just saw in that package the services that the VRC provides to victims. Can you tell me about the services provided that you feel are most important?
I think like the core service is the hotline. People have access to our hotline 24 hours a day. During the weekdays, when the office is open, somebody can walk in at any time to receive services. We do individual counseling. We do support groups, in-house support groups, and then we go out into the community and do educational groups. In addition, we provide accompaniment to victims of crime. In all 3 counties, if a sexual assault victim went to the hospital calls us, we go to the hospital. If somebody chooses to report to the police, we go to the police with them. If arrest is made, we go to preliminary hearings, trials, sentencings, plea agreements, appeals. But also we would provide support to a victim if they choose to go in front of the parole board when an offender is coming up for parole.
And one thing that I didn't know is that there's financial compensation for victims.
There is. In Pennsylvania, it's the Victims' Compensation Assistance Program. And I feel like it's Pennsylvania's best-kept secret because a lot of times victims aren't aware of it. They only have 2 years to file for it, so it's important for victims to know that right in the beginning. But it pays for all out-of-pocket losses to victims of crime. It would pay for medical expenses. It pays for lost wages. With victims of homicide, it pays for funeral expenses. It pays for counseling. It'll pay for transportation.
Would you say it's something that kind of goes unnoticed by the victim?
I think that a lot of times victims aren't notified of that. I just think that they're not aware of that service that's available to them. On a daily basis, probably a few times throughout the week, there'll be a counselor that will help people apply for a Victims' Compensation Assistance Program. It pays also for relocation and crime scene cleanup.
That's great. We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we will talk about the education and advocacy pieces of the Victims Resource Center.
So you should give me 6.
Mommy! ayúdanos a cuidar. Llama al 1-888-971-2013 y obtén información para cuidar mejor a quien cuidó.
Planning the right amount of food is hard. The Guestimator makes it easy. Just tell it who's coming and what's for dinner. Then it tells you how much to make. And yes, it even plans for leftovers. Try it at SaveTheFood.com.
They call me Prince like I'm royalty or something. But the places I've lived ain't no palaces. So I don't need grilled salmon or a new scratching post. Just give me a cardboard box and a can of tuna and we're good. You can even change my name. I'm cool being the kitty formerly known as Prince.
Welcome back. I'm now joined by Janet McKay, the Executive Director for the VRC. Janet, what does the VRC do in terms of education?
So we have a number of different programs that we call prevention education programs, and they're to all age groups. We start with daycare and preschool and go all the way through the elderly. But they are mostly to prevent sexual assault. Some of it is bullying also, and about healthy relationships. So some of our programs are really geared to raise awareness about victimization and to give you information to reduce your risk. But we have been moving more to what's called primary prevention programs, where we're really trying to change the attitudes, the beliefs, and the behaviors of people so that violence is reduced. So particularly for college age, what we like to do is do the bystander intervention programs. And therefore, if you see behavior and talk and attitudes that are demeaning to women, that minimize sexual assault and domestic violence, that you as a bystander would speak up and say, that's not okay. And what happens is there's a small amount of offenders that are out there start to get the message that they shouldn't be doing this, and that it's not okay.
Now, I remember earlier, you know, the activity from Misericordia Wilkes, LCC, Kings. And I know at Misericordia we have the free program promoting healthy relationships through education and empowerment.
Wonderful.
How important is it to be that active on college campuses?
It's very important. We know that a lot of victimization happens on college campuses, but most of it is not reported. And so I think victims don't know that what happened to them is wrong. And that there's help out there, and that most of the students on their college campus are not offenders, and they don't think that these things should happen also. So the more we have of everybody speaking up and saying this is not okay, and changing the culture, then it'll be a safer place.
Would you feel that, or do you feel that the awareness overall on college campuses is positive? Do you think that there is enough awareness, or that there always could be more?
Always could be more. I do think probably with the hashtag #MeToo movement more recently that there has been an increased awareness across all ages, but I still think that it's not something that necessarily every single person thinks about.
Now, I know on the VRC website it says it wants to address the acts of violence in whatever form. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, there's verbal abuse that happens way before physical things happen. There is a whole attitudes and talk, you know, that happens. So that is a form of violence. If you're saying things that are meant to harm other people.
I feel like the education just about the verbal violence kind of goes under the radar a little bit. You know, people kind of brush it off almost as, you know, it hasn't reached that physical level yet. But in a sense, it has. It just should be taken as seriously as the verbal.
Well, I think what it does, it sets up the norm that this is okay. If that's accepted, people don't say, oh, don't talk like that, then that's accepted, and then you can move to the next level and keep moving. I mean, sexual harassment is a huge problem in our society, and as we saw most recently, that it was accepted in a lot of places by a lot of people.
Now, we saw, or you just mentioned the hashtag trend to gain awareness, but How do you feel or what do you feel is the most important way to spread that education throughout, whether it be college campuses, middle schools, things like that? What is the best way to spread that education?
Peer-to-peer would be the best.
Right.
So we try to teach that so that students themselves can go out and teach their peers. So we start with the training of the trainers, and then hopefully they can take that message out, because you're going to listen to somebody else who is more like you than an adult coming in and talking.
Now talk to me a little bit about the advocacy in the VRC.
So we advocate for victims' rights. Victims have rights in Pennsylvania. They have certain rights if their case goes through the criminal justice system. They have a right to be notified. They have a right to have input in what's happening. So we make sure that those rights are respected, and that people do notify them of what they need to know. We also do advocacy in terms of changing laws that might be harmful to victims, and so we advocate for legislation to go through that will be supportive of victims and not re-victimizing. There are also a number of what we call systems that victims encounter once they've been victimized, and that could be, the medical system, could be the criminal justice system. It could be a number of different places they might have to go to get assistance, and sometimes they're not very sensitive to victims. And so what we do in advocating for them is to make them aware of what they do, the impact it has on those victims, and hopefully to change the way then that they treat victims.
Real quick, I just want to ask, what is the point in education that you feel needs the most talked about?
That's difficult. There's so much that needs to be done. I think one thing that's very important is that we know that there's a small amount of offenders, and that most of people are not offenders, and that we need to speak up more.
Right. Well, that's going to do it for us. On more information, visit vrcnepa.org. Thank you, and we will see you next time.
Mommy!
Mija!
Llama al 1-888-971-2013 y obtén información para cuidar mejor a quien cuidó de ti.
Te pondrán a prueba. Te llevarán hasta el límite. Pero no importa cuán fuerte griten o cuántos cositos de queso vuelen por el aire, tú eres el conductor, el que está al mando. No te rindas. Resiste. Y arranca solo después de oír el clic del cinturón, porque cada 8 minutos un pasajero de 8 a 14 años resulta lastimado en un choque.
No doubt you're going places, young lady.
Thank you. And thank you for the interview as well. I can imagine it was the last thing that you wanted to do after such a long campaign meeting.
You really are a very intelligent young woman. You're very smooth.
You're very smooth yourself.
You have no idea.
Hi, I'm Peter, and there's nothing I love more than sharing vegetables with my friends.
Come on in! Help yourself to anything.
That's why we give our food the utmost respect it deserves. Did you know there are simple steps we can all take to help save food? You can cook it, store it, even share it. Just don't waste it. Because when it comes to food, better ate than never. To learn more, visit SaveTheFood.com.